And welcome everyone for our fireside chat, which is about leapfrogging poverty. And we will be talking about solar, about technology, and about capital. Actually, what is a fireside chat? It's a nice conversation by the fire. And it was announced as a fire chat, but actually this is pretty true, as you know, and Greta is highlighting it very well. Our planet is on fire, and we do need to find solution for the 2 billion people that are under poverty conditions. And that was discussed on the previous panel, access to energy and the fact that maybe half of the population in Africa lives without proper conditions of lighting, studying, giving birth is a very big issue for all of us, and not only for those poor people who are living in the villages. So I don't want to take too much time in introducing the topic. I'll give the mic to Nicole, whom is coming from Ghana, and that will both explain why and illustrate with stories from the field.
Perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. I appreciate your indulging my English. I wanted to start out actually by asking you a question. What do you think your life would be like without electricity? And I'm asking it not rhetorically. I'm actually asking, so one or two of you put up your hands. What would your life be like without electricity? Really think about it. When you woke up in the morning, or you wake up in the morning, how would you have coffee? You'd have to make a fire. That's how you'd have coffee. If you think about your work, you think, I go to work, I'd work on a computer. No, you wouldn't. There's no electricity for computers, there's no electricity for machinery, so you'd most likely work on a farm. And on that farm, you'd work very hard, because the things that make farming, modern farming, productive are irrigation, which requires power, is cold storage, which means that once you harvest crops, they won't spoil. So in Africa, yields, the production of farms, is about 1/3 of that in Europe. And in fact, in Africa, people lose 50% of their crop to spoilage because there is no cold storage after you finish your produce. You rush home because there's no light, so you want to make your dinner before it gets dark. You rush home. Again, you can't have fresh meat because there's no refrigeration. You finish your dinner, and it's night. And it's just dark. No TV, no phone, no laptop, no nothing. So this picture here is of a teacher in one of our villages before we came and brought electricity. This teacher is preparing his lessons by flashlight. And I personally found that unacceptable. When I learned about this in 2015, I was just like, this has to end, and I can do something about it. So I started our company, and just to show you a difference between before electricity and after electricity, on the left is me signing up customers in this village, filling out forms by the light of our cell phones because there was no light in the community. And the picture on the right is after we've brought electricity. We've got street lights. People have light at night so that they can see, so they can walk down the street safely. So it's a completely different way of life. Now, how we did that is through solar. We build solar-powered microgrids. I believe they talked a little bit about this in the last panel, but since I don't speak French, I don't know. But we build solar installations in rural villages, and then we have poles and wires to bring electricity to each of the homes. This is all supported on a completely 21st century technology backbone, but the core of what we need here is sustainable electricity serving rural poor people to solve the problem of there being 1 billion people without electricity at all and 2 billion people without enough. So I'll tell you the story of one of our customers. Her name is Abena. Before we brought electricity, Abena sold ice and fish. She would travel 10 miles every day. She'd travel on a motorbike for about half the way, and then she'd get in a bus and she'd be crowded with a bunch of people, and she'd travel the rest of the way. She'd get a ice chest, and then she'd carry it back the same 10 miles and try to sell ice and fish in her community. But the problem is since no one really wants to buy melted ice and no one wants to buy spoiling fish, her sales were very low. She was making less than $1 a day. And then we came, and we brought electricity, and she watched, and she saw that our electricity was powerful enough to power the freezer that she'd always dreamed of getting. It was reliable enough that she knew she'd always have electricity, and it was affordable so that she could keep her profits. So she bought the freezer and started selling not only ice and fish, but drinks. Her income has increased 11 times to $10 a day. So in Africa, in rural communities in Africa, that's middle class, and she did that just by adding electricity. And now she's actually thinking about buying a second freezer so she can wholesale to other women in her community. So that's some of the power of what having electricity is. To give 2 more very quick examples, the woman on the right, she is running a grain mill in her community. They had the grain mill before. It was run by a diesel genset. But the problem is starting a diesel genset is really hard. So her son could only run the diesel genset. Not to mention it's just dirty and nasty and polluting. But her son had to run it. So he could only run the grain mill at night, after people had come home, after he'd come home from the farm. So once we powered it with electricity, now his mother can run it. So it doubles the income possibilities in their family. And then on the right, one of the other big challenges with electricity and not having electricity is education. I talked about the teacher. Another is healthcare. If you think about modern healthcare, it relies on electricity. And in this case, there's a clinic that we're powering that now can run ultrasounds. And ultrasounds, this is in a community where 1 out of 10 women die in childbirth. So 10% of pregnancies end in death. So they got an ultrasound, which is a great lifesaver. And then we personally, as our company, we had an experience of a woman who was in labor and it was not going well. And so we rushed her to this clinic that we're powering, and they found out that she was going to die within hours had she not had this life-saving diagnostic. So having electricity, it saves lives, it increases wealth, it improves education. It is essential for the modern lives we live. But in order to deploy it, and in order for us not to continue to destroy the planet, we need to use methodologies like solar to do it. But I'm 100% certain that we've got those technologies now. We will continue innovating, and we will solve the problem of the 1 billion people without electricity.
Thank you very much, Nicole. That was very inspiring. So you discovered a solution. Nicole is bringing electricity. It's like a little EDF, but in rural villages. And it's one part of the solutions that are today scaling in Africa. I let the floor to Thomas, who will introduce another kind of technology and another kind of solution, which is not really electricity, but energy services, somehow. Please explain us, Thomas.
Thank you very much, Thomas. My name is also Thomas, Thomas Chevillot. I'm actually the CFO of a company called Bbox. It's a UK company. We operate across 4 countries in Africa. So Kenya, where we started because of mobile money, Rwanda, DRC, and Togo. We have about 700 people all across Africa. We have a bit of a different way we operate. So we have a team in London, because it's a UK company, doing all the engineering. So we actually think about which products make sense in Africa. We have a team, of course, in Kigali, in Rwanda, close to the customers to understand what are the needs and services of the clients. And we have a team in China, so we can actually manufacture our systems. Now, just a bit of a digression, but I'm actually an ex-banker. I used to work in banking, and I was looking at project finance a few years ago. And very quickly, I realized that actually doing all those bigger projects, the power plants, the solar farms, etc., was not really working in Africa. So typically in Africa, those project lead times take about 7 years. And as you know, the African population is growing very much. It's going to double in size in the next 30 years. Plus, we are not actually filling in today the level for which we should actually do to electrify the current population of Africa. So unfortunately, if you look at it from an electrification rate, we're actually decreasing, which is very bad. So after working in the sector for a few years, I met actually the CEO of Bbox at the time who had just started, and I found this solution super inspiring because I thought that actually it's not the only, but it's one of the alternatives to go fast, deep into the rural areas where actually people really need electricity. So we have those 4 countries in Africa where we have actually a distribution network. So on average, in each country, we have about 150 people on the ground with shops where we sell. We service our customers, so we actually sell them the service with the products. And we typically are close to them, so we want to make sure that they have a good service. We're not selling really a product, we're more selling a service. And the reason we can do that is because actually we have a very good technology. We have a platform called Pulse, which actually allows us to very proactively detect any issues before they arrive. So we have in each of our control units, we have actually a SIM card which communicates through GSM to the platform. And in London, for instance, you can actually monitor how the battery is doing. So instead of being actually completely reactive to the issue, you are proactive and you can anticipate when the problem is happening. So that's super important. Just to give you a parallel, for instance, with Fukushima in Japan, big issue, you send your best engineers on the ground, it takes some time, but you can solve the issue. With actually the distributed energy model that we have, where we have across Africa more than 100,000 customers, if you're not smart, if you're not efficient, then you can't actually do that. So that's where we think we can actually come in and help bridge the gap. The second thing which I'd like to mention is the fact that I think more and more governments in Africa are realizing that they can't just do bigger projects, they have to be smart and they have to use off-grid. That's the name of the sector where we operate. And off-grid needs to be, you need to have a proper framework to actually create an incentive for the investors to come in. I'm going to show in a few seconds actually a video which we have in Togo, which is a country we entered in 2017 with the Togolese government, which actually was very smart in terms of creating the right incentives. So tax incentives, they make it very easy for us to actually operate there. They have only 6% of their population in off-grid areas, so in the rural areas, who don't have access to who have access to electricity. So 94% of them don't have access to electricity, which as of today, I think is quite shameful. And so we came in a few months ago, and very quickly we managed to actually install the distribution network, and we have now 13,000 people actually, 13,000 households electrified, which actually equates to 65,000 people impacted. So we think that's pretty amazing in just under 18 months. We want to actually do much more because, as you know, it was mentioned before, the size of the problem is very important. And yeah, we think that with, by bringing on board big utility companies and strategic investors such as ENGIE is one of our investors, EDF is another investor, those guys who don't have the agility that a small company like ours have, can help us actually, of course, finance the billions of dollars that are needed to actually solve the problem. So with that, I will actually show you a video now. I'm a financier, I'm not a tech guy, so Thomas, you're going to have to help me.
Maintenant, j'ai la possibilité d'étudier, de faire mes devoirs, même après la tombée de la nuit.
Aujourd'hui, mon bétail est en sécurité, ma maison est éclairée. J'ai ma télévision pour me divertir et m'informer.
À présent, je peux faire la cuisine et organiser mon foyer en toute sérénité de jour comme de nuit.
Je peux même recharger mon téléphone portable.
Avoir la lumière en tout temps a changé notre vie et ma famille est plus épanouie.
Vous aussi offrez-vous une nouvelle vie grâce au kit solaire B-Box. À partir de 160 francs CFA par jour, garantie du matériel 3 ans, service après-vente disponible 7 jours sur 7, remplacement des accessoires inclus. Pour toute information, contactez la permanence B-Box au 70 05 95 99 ou au 97 16 90 90 ou rendez-vous dans les agences B-Box présentes dans toutes les régions. B-Box, parce que la vie continue à la tombée de la nuit.
Excellent video. Thomas, can you explain a little further? I see 160 franc, CFA franc per day. It's like something like 10 to 20 cents per day. How do you manage to finance that? How does it work? How the people can access to those life-changing light without paying it up front?
Sure. So the issue we have is that those guys, those clients, although they actually have revenues because they are mostly farmers, they don't have salaries. So they don't have actually a bank account and they can actually pay us cash. So we have to actually buy the solar system from China, and then we have to actually finance our customer, typically over 3 years or sometimes longer. And we charge them a monthly fee of about 7 to 8 euros typically, with some of the accessories that you could see here. In some cases, if they have a TV, they would pay more, etc. So we're thinking about, we have already actually thought about different solutions, innovative solutions. At B-Box, we try to be a bit innovative. We use actually crowdfunding, which, as you may know what it is, but it's actually, we use a platform that actually puts in relationship or connects people like you and myself who want to actually invest in the sector a small amount of money. And once actually a campaign is launched and ends with, say, $1 million or €1 million, then the money is transferred to the local company, and then they can buy the solar systems and they sell, etc. So that's one quick way to do it. And we have some different other tools, such as securitizing, so actually taking all those contracts that we have and we transfer that to an investor who wants to actually finance those contracts. There are many different ways, but that's the beauty about having sustainable finance, so really long-term smart finance, be involved in those kind of projects which have a very strong social impact.
Very, very interesting to see how technology, solar-enabled technology and capital can bring an impact. B-Box is one of the pioneers in the pay-as-you-go sector. They have been doing that over the last maybe 10 years in East Africa, electrifying thousands of households. For a company like Suna Design that I created and more recently Moon, it has been a great inspiration. And we have witnessed when we have electrified some villages in Africa, that energy is a mean, is not the final solution. And we, our clients, the people, wanted to have the usage of energy. And the TV you have seen on this advertisement is one key aspect. At Moon, we have worked on another side of the need of the people, which is access to digital information, and all together create value, enabling them to earn more money and enable them to reimburse the kit. I want to share you one video that Moon has created very recently that highlights how from solar you can just create wealth and leapfrog poverty.
Ma fille, je suis très fier de toi et je tenais à ce que tu le saches. Quand je te vois comme ça, gérer ton travail si prenant, ta famille, et trouver le temps de prendre soin de tes parents, je mesure le chemin parcouru. Lorsque tu es né, je voulais t'offrir le meilleur avenir possible. Mais nous étions à l'époque coupés du monde. Pas d'énergie, pas d'accès à Internet. Et on te voyait faire tant d'efforts pour faire tes devoirs à la lueur de la bougie. C'est cette année-là, je me souviens que tout a changé. On a eu l'énergie dans toute la maison. Petit à petit, l'avenir s'éclairait. Il n'y avait plus de raison de quitter le village et tu étais ravi. En même temps, il y a eu notre premier smartphone. Tu as vu plus vite que nous que le moonphone pouvait révolutionner nos vies. Tu avais trouvé une recette de confiture dans le moonphone et ta mère a lancé son activité. Je te voyais devenir une grande jeune fille et nous étions heureux de pouvoir te garder ainsi à la maison jusqu'à ton bac. Grâce au kit, nous sommes devenus éligibles à l'achat d'une pompe solaire et notre jardin a pris une autre dimension. On savait alors que l'on aurait les moyens de financer tes études, même si je redoutais que tu quittes la maison. Le soir de la fête de ton bac, tu nous as dit que tu étais inscrite à une université en ligne. Papa, avec le numérique, je peux réussir des études supérieures tout en restant ici nous aider. Maintenant, tu as un travail que je n'aurais même pas pu imaginer ici dans la région. Tu peux être fier de toi, de ta ténacité et de tes choix. Sache que ton père est heureux d'avoir pu te voir grandir et d'avoir partagé tous ces moments avec toi.
So that demonstrates a little part of our work, which is enabling through energy access of digital and financial services. As Thomas explained and Nicole before, of course, the need to create value is huge, and on the pay-as-you-go scheme or prepayment, somehow we foster the development of mobile money and access to financial services, which are key development enabler for those rural population. And what the magic about it and what is feasible in Africa today is to become like an EDF, an Orange, and a BNP at the same time. Without regulation, without constraint, and really lifting people out of poverty in a very short lifespan, because the basics are there. It costs a lot of money for doing that. At Suna, we developed that technology. Bbox, maybe you can give us some number. For Suna, it has been €2 million in terms of R&D that we financed through equity. We are now scaling the project. We need to raise debt. Maybe Thomas can share some numbers, and after Nicole about how you guys financed that, how much that was the cost, how much you raised, and maybe after Dries, who is an expert in finding money for financing or growth, will explain the whole potential about fundraising.
Thanks, Thomas. No, I can't actually divulge, of course, how much we've spent, but we've spent quite a bit of money, of course, because we have a great technological platform. We actually did 3 rounds of fundraising. So we did actually Series C about 3 years ago now. We have actually great investors such as ENGIE, the French utility company. We have a few social impact funds from the US, from Europe as well. And we also have had a lot of feedback from Orange. We work with Orange actually in 5 countries in Africa, in Senegal, Mali, Guinea, Côte d'Ivoire, and the DRC. And of course, Orange, you know, being Orange, they try to actually, they looked very carefully at the technology platform. They tried to break the platform, to hack the platform, and they were really happy when they found out that it couldn't be broken. But we do actually care very much about R&D. That's one of the top priorities in our company.
I've some of my very close friends that have known me since a long, long time ago, since I was 12, which was only a couple of years ago. It's a long time ago. And they say that, Nicole, you have finally found a use for how cheap you are. So we have been very, very capital efficient. We've built 15 mini grids, deployed over 200 kilowatts, which is small compared to what Bbox has done. But we have done this with $1.5 million, which is an incredibly low amount of money to have raised. But this is a capital-intensive industry. In order to build these type of assets, financed day by day by people who are making less than $1 a day, we do need huge capital investments. So we're constantly raising money. We're looking at fundraising from DFIs like Proparco, and in the UK and the US government. We are also working with impact funds. So there's a wide variety of funders in this market, which is needed because I argue that this is one of the most important problems in the world right now. It both touches on climate change, but also the set of social issues that, if left unchecked, will cause significant instability in the world. And so I think it's one of the most important problems, and, but it'll take a little bit of money to fix it.
Thank you, Nicole. So I'm Driss Sifri. I'm partner and founder of Altrace. So we've created Altrace basically to help these great entrepreneurs like Nicole, Thomas, and Thomas fund their amazing projects and actually achieve impact. So achieving impact requires money and a lot of capital. For example, just for energy access in Africa, it's 600 million people out of the grid. So that's 600 million people to connect. According to IEA, it's between 100 billion and 200 billion of investments required in the next 10 years to electrify Africa, at least by the standards that we know today. Obviously, for people or entrepreneurs more efficient than others like Nicole, it's probably less, but that's still a lot of money. So what we're doing at Altrace is really helping entrepreneurs get their project right and approach investors with all the equity story that they are building over time, the business plan, and basically selling a story to investors that are keen to invest in this sector. Basically, while the impact sector has grown tremendously in the last 5 years, and what we're living here with the kind of consciousness about what's going on has obviously made asset managers, which used to be a lot less interested by impact, a lot more keen to allocate capital. So in the last 5 years, impact investing has grown up from 100 billion 5 years ago to 500 billion today. So if you look at all asset managers over the world with actual impact investing criteria that are willing to invest in sectors like electrification, like access to, well, the various SDGs that are, have been developed by the UN, the 17 SDGs, you can find, well, the pool of capital can reach 500 billion. I think there's obviously something very specific about allowing for impact and about the way impact investors look at investments. They obviously look at returns. We used to have previously just foundations or grants in these sectors with DFIs, and now we have investors that are looking for obviously return, and that's new to the sector. and that's a really good thing because they just found out that you can enable impact while enabling for return on capital, because that's the only way to attract capital. I've been hearing stories, and in particular from French investors, that you can allocate capital just from the state or GFIs, but in reality that's not enough. The only way to allocate real capital to this sector is to make these businesses really profitable. For the entrepreneurs, but also for investors. And then I would tell this to any social entrepreneurs that's envisaging a project over here. Obviously, the first days, you need to focus on impact as a first priority, but ultimately, you need to make it a profitable business to attract capital. And that's a virtuous circle, sorry. And as I said, the difference between impact investors and others is that they are looking for return, but they are also looking to measure impact. So Thomas at Bibox knows that. They want to know how many people got connected to electricity through their investment. They want to know how much tons of CO2 have been saved through their investments. And they want to go to their own investors and tell them, well, you've given us this amount of money, we've made this percentage of return, but we also allowed this number of people to have access to services they wouldn't have access alternatively another way. So our role as enablers is really help these great people and great entrepreneurs to access this capital, to work on their case, their equity story, and obviously approach investors to invest in their companies. So Bibox is a good example of a very successful company. Obviously, Thomas as well has seen this in the past. And we've raised to date in 2 years $250 million in various sectors. So that includes new energy, resource efficiency, that's also very much impact. Financial services, financial access in Africa is a major issue. You start, well, there's a kind of pyramid. You start with energy access, which is the most basic service that you would like to provide to people, and then you look at the other things that needs to come together. As you said, Thomas, you have communication. You need to have a phone and be able to communicate, either to connect to your families, to connect your families abroad, to them for help or for money transfers they need to. You need to have access to basic financial services. So we also do that. I think there's a lot that's been done by microfinance institutions in the past, but now there's technology which is allowing a lot more through money transfer from abroad to developing countries. You have a lot of companies doing that, or microfinance, but using your mobile phone or the web, but in reality that's mobile phone. And obviously we are also covering healthcare and education. So there's a lot to be done. We're very passionate about helping great entrepreneurs to access capital. I think there is capital out there, but I think you need to have the good state of mind, i.e. still consider that you're really building a business that needs to be profitable, that not only needs to allow for impact, whatever your business is, but also make returns for yourself as an entrepreneur, but also to capital providers.
Thank you very much, Jules. Maybe you can explain how you find a company, how you help them to build their business plan, and from an idea, from a story, as we just said, you build up a company that is investment ready, and that is a key topic for most entrepreneurs.
Well, basically, we work a lot with recommendations. So when we work with entrepreneurs and the capital raising works well, they obviously have their friends or acquaintances call us for new assignments. The way we work is basically really get intimate with entrepreneurs, get to understand their business, get to understand what they're actually doing and what the actual impact is on the ground, and basically get the rationale and what they're trying to achieve. And our role is basically to make sure that transpires to outsiders and financiers. So we help them prepare basically their marketing materials. So for those who know this, that's sometimes called a teaser and an information memorandum. So it's marketing documentation basically to explain what the company is about, why this is a great company, why it is competitive, why it is going to be a successful venture, and obviously also help them put this in numbers, i.e. Build business plans and have a kind of view of the profitability over time and build that with them. And the idea is obviously then once we have this kind of marketing information and package, reach out to investors that are keen on the specific sector we're covering and engage discussion with them and ultimately obviously make the deal happen. So we have lots of stories of great entrepreneurs. Thomas, you've been part of those. I think one interesting story is more that we are trying to be as helpful as we can to the whole ecosystem. So we initially started with companies, and one day another person came to us who wanted to raise actually capital as an impact fund itself, because as you might find out, the venture capital is really missing in Africa, and there is very little money for early projects. So one day, Acumen, one of the impact investors that have done a lot based in the US, and they've financed a lot of different projects in various places in Africa and India, they came to us and said, well, we need to allocate more capital to energy access and in East Africa. So can you guys help us out to raise a fund that's basically investing in East Africa? So we said, that's not what we're doing for a living, but we're really passionate about this and we'll try. So we helped them to raise a $70 million fund that's doing energy access and funding venture companies in the energy access in Africa. So we went out to the market, and the idea is exactly the one I just described. It's just to go for investors that are looking for return and widen the universe of potential investors for this sector. So it's been a successful raise, and that's potentially more capital for you guys.
This is very impressive because, as Nicole pointed, we have a big issue in Africa and there is a need a lot of money. And what we discovered today is that a lot of capital is still available for investment-ready projects and companies. The sector already raised tens of millions, hundreds of millions of euro for doing their job. That has been mainly equity, because at the beginning you need to finance your project, to prove your KPIs, to go in the field, to build the product, the technology, the team. That costs a lot of money. And when this is rolling out, the next step is raising debt, because somehow you finance people that have access to basic services and pay back. And this is something that we could maybe dig a little bit. Today, that World Impact Summit is organized by Solilend. It's a crowd lending platform that was created with the idea of raising debt in France and in Europe for companies like ours, electrifying clients. We have calculated that the money available on livret A in France, which is actually not giving good yield for the people, like less than 1% yield. So you have money on your livret A, and that is useless. That finance war and nuclear, which is maybe not the best usage of your money. And that money available on the livret A alone in France could electrify Africa. This is absolutely crazy. And Solilend is pioneering with other crowd lending platforms a solution for everyone to lend to projects. As Moon, we have launched a project using a crowd lending platform, a crowd lending operation. And in a couple of days, you raise 100,000 euro for lending to your customer. Thomas, you had the same experience. How engaging people here in the West is important.
Thanks. No, it's very important, and I think from a private individual perspective, it empowers actually people like you or me to actually be committed to electrifying Africa and the other parts of the world and participate in the efforts. And you get a good yield, so that's always good. I think it's great that we have Soliland in France. At Bbox, we use actually a Swedish platform called Trine. We use a British platform called Lend a Hand, and it's been very exciting to see how quickly actually the public reacts to those campaigns and how easy and efficient it is to actually raise capital. Now, of course, we need to be careful. You know, there's a very thorough process to actually make sure that everything is well done, and we're always super careful. We don't want to deceive investors, of course, but it's a great actually way to raise capital faster. We've been there before. So a few years ago when we started, it was extremely difficult, and I'm sure that Nicole and Thomas, you've gone through that as well to actually raise capital. So it's not the only way to do it, but crowdfunding is a good way to do it.
Thank you, Thomas. We have a couple of minutes to go. Unfortunately, we are not so many attending that conference, but your role is important. So maybe if you have a question that you want to raise to our guest speaker, it would be interesting to have your opinion about how you want to engage and how you want to put down the music. Is there any question?
Don't be shy. Try it.
Yeah, please, the mic is coming. Yeah, wait for the mic. So please introduce yourself and your question.
I studied at Helsinki University. Development studies, cultural anthropology, political anthropology, and Roman philology. So what interests me is very much your intervention and what you have done in Africa.
Please keep the mic here. I'm not sure we can get your question. Yeah, please, your question.
So my friend who went to Togo from England, how did you manage to get into these villages contacts and if you ever speak any language, then English with them or French?
I can't hear the question.
Okay, let's leave it there. Just let's leave it there now because it's up.
How you found the money to start the project, I guess, right?
So yeah, the question was, how did we find the money to go into Togo?
No, but did you go here yourself?
Yeah, we started ourselves. So we actually put some equity. We won actually a project called Project CISO.
Yeah.
CISO in Togolese local language means light up.
Okay.
It was organized by the government of Togo.
Okay.
And we won the project, we put some capital, we raised some local debt with the Togolese bank.
Okay.
And then we started the project.
Thank you very much, because I've been in London myself, and I studied, as I said, Finland, but I'm from Guinea, French-speaking country. So language-wise, how did you manage by yourself or with some friends around when you were in Togo?
So so your question is, when are we going to Guinea?
Yeah. No, to Togo.
I'm going to add a little bit to your story because we also have talked to the Togolese government and talked to the Togolese government at the same time Bbox was entering the country. And I think it's a useful thing to think about if you're trying to enter a new country, which it sounds like you are. The president of Togo saw Bbox installations in East Africa, and he was really impressed. He thought that the solution was great, he could see a real purpose for it, and he could see that he, as a president, could bring something good to his people. And I think the reason I mention this is that a lot of opportunities are brought out by engaging with marketing, not just engaging with politicians. But Bbox had a good head start, but you don't have to have that good start. You have to have a great idea, and you have to just keep pushing and building momentum and not giving up. And that's how you can make it happen.
Point, actually. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well done.
So music is down now. Sorry for that little interruption. It was not easy to get in either your question or the answer. Is there another question? It seems that it has been very clear. So I believe all of you have understood that you should register on Soliland and land for the next project, because even though if great solutions do exist already, companies like Raise are helping companies to raise big money for scaling in Africa. Some players are there on the field, electrifying on a day-by-day basis hundreds of people, lifting them out of poverty. Still, your help is needed, so please join the effort and follow the next project coming on Soliland. You'll have quite a few regarding energy access. And it looks like the party is about to start. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much to the panelists. And enjoy the World Impact Summit.